Here we go. We're live. Surprise, surprise.
Hi.
I'm here.
Yep, not Allie.
I am not Allie. Surprise. I was like, I don't have time to go back. Like, we couldn't possibly fix all of our social media stuff. We can't possibly do all that. So we're live. So we'll wait for some questions to show up. We have lots of people watching already. So for those of you who are new, welcome. I have Maia here from Quirk. We only have half of Quirk tonight. And because Allie last minute was not feeling well. So guys, this is your opportunity to get your questions answered. Maia and Allie have both been here the past couple of weeks, and they'll continue to come on. I think we still have like another Monday or two. And so, yeah, so guys, get your questions answered. This is your time. I will say, just warning, especially because this is like a surprise Jenna appearance. Probably going to be a short one tonight. I already promised my toddler bedtime, so I know better than to go back on a promise like that. So yeah, we'll cut it short, like half hour. So get your questions in. So Maia, why don't you introduce, I'll say who I am in case anyone's new. My name is Jenna Overbaugh. I'm a therapist here at OCD, and I'm also responsible for a lot of our community engagement. So I've been working with people who have OCD and anxiety since 2008. And I'm coming at you live from my bedroom this morning, or this evening, trying to find a secluded place away from the craziness of my house at this time. So Maia, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
and like on behalf of you and Allie, kind of what Quirk is all about.
Absolutely. So my name is Maia. As Jenna said, I'm the co-founder of Quirk. I have firsthand lived experience of life-disrupting OCD, which I have gotten treatment for. And out of treatment came the idea and drive to do Quirk and to start this. We are a nonprofit, and we are aimed at OCD advocacy and providing education to reduce the stigma out there and expand upon the limited representations of OCD that are currently in the media. We really are founded on this like love for being engaged as a part of this community, the OCD community, and really uplifting people and creating this culture of recovery and incorporating a lot of values like humor and creativity as well, because we find that this community is so creative and so smart, and we really love to use those talents to empower others in recovery and use it towards advocacy work. So that's a bit about Quirk.
Awesome. I love it. I love everything that you guys do. And I'm constantly referring people to your support groups and to all the things that you do. So yeah, thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah.
So we'll just try to go a little bit more rapid fire than what I normally do, since we have kind of a shorter session tonight. So let's just go for it. This is from NM. I know the first step is accepting. I'm struggling very hard to accept that I have been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. I just can't believe it, and my mind seemingly doesn't want to. How do I go about it? So Maia, I'm sure you can probably give us a little blast from your past too, like that initial diagnosis. But just from a therapist standpoint, this experience can be fraught with a lot of different reactions, and any way that you feel about it is valid. You can feel relieved about it. You can feel, people have used the word like justified or kind of vindicated, like they knew and they just wanted a confirmation of it. But they also can feel really sad. They can kind of like have a hard time accepting it, and maybe they even resist it a little bit. I think just giving yourself some time and some space, but also some things for hopefulness in the future are that OCD is extremely treatable. You can recover from OCD. You can get to the point where it no longer dictates your life, and that you're able to make decisions based on what it is that you want and your values. So the treatment for it is actually more effective for OCD and anxiety than any other treatment for any other disorder. And so while it's probably difficult to accept the fact that you have been diagnosed with OCD, you know, you're already one step ahead of the game than some other individuals. As difficult as that is, you've already made that first step. Now, whenever you're ready for that next step of treatment, it's ready, it's available for you, and it's really, really effective. So Maia, I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo just everything that you said. So when I was diagnosed with OCD, it was definitely a shock to me. I was surprised because I struggle with more of the pure O type, the like mental compulsions and not things that could be like outwardly observable by others. So I experienced a long time without the diagnosis and actually didn't really understand it myself because I had the understanding that OCD was, how the media portrays it a lot of times with being strictly stuff about contamination or magical thinking sorts of things. And that just didn't fit in with my experience. So I definitely experienced a lot of shock and surprise. And so I think that definitely took me some time to really sit with the diagnosis. But I was also partially relieved because I finally had a name for something that had been troubling me since I was 8 years old. And that kind of mind shift to, oh, I'm a terrible person and I'm defined by these thoughts, that switch to, oh, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. Like that was a belief that was so ingrained into me because I've been dealing with it for so long that getting the diagnosis and labeling that as OCD felt really foreign and just completely new. So that definitely took time to adjust to.
Mm-hmm. Lots of emotions. It's okay. Just let yourself feel, let yourself have whatever reaction that you need to have for a little bit. And then when you're ready to kind of take that breath and like collect yourself again, then you'll know that it's time.
Yeah, definitely take the time to kind of have your process of coming to terms with it. Like take the time you need and feel the feels. Don't avoid those.
Feel the feels. It should be a sticker. I have, speaking of stickers, guys, I have so many OCD themed stickers here from the octopus is there.
Love the octopus.
Brief uncertainty, maybe, maybe not. So those little reminders help keep me going too. All right. How do you tell the difference between intrusive OCD thoughts or schizophrenia? Because I'm overthinking. First of all, I want to validate that this is a really common intrusive thought, that I'm going crazy, or maybe this isn't OCD. I think that's a really nasty, but also very predictable trick that the OCD can play from time to time, like that there's something wrong with you, that you're somehow the exception, that all these other things that other people are saying might make sense for every other person who has OCD, but you are somehow the exception, that you are special and that you are, developing a psychotic disorder. I would just say at the cost of providing reassurance, if you're even worried about this, chances are that it's OCD. So OCD is when you have some insight, right? So, you can have OCD and have very, very low insight. Insight is pretty much just like the realization that these things aren't actually legitimate. And, it's one thing to be like 99% sure that the OCD fear isn't real, but what if it is? Versus like, no, I'm 100% sure that this is real and I live by this and it's 100% the way that it is, despite all reality checks, despite what the rest of the world and the rest of the facts and evidence tell me, this is the way that it is. That's like no insight, absent insight. So a professional will be able to tell you based on your own unique situation and your own circumstances, but the fact that you're even worried about it, probably going to err on the side of OCD, but it's very common. And you can do exposures around this, right? So you can do exposures around like any physical sensations or any like psychological experiences that you have that kind of trigger you to think that you might be going crazy, whether it's like sometimes people think they're kind of like living in a simulation, right? Like I worked with someone who, if she looked at pieces of furniture in her house, she thought that she was like in The Sims. And so she had an exposure to look at different items of furniture, in her house and imagine that she was kind of in the simulation, and that maybe she was going crazy and that she was going to develop a psychotic disorder. So a professional will be able to tell you the difference, but the fact that you can even think about that and that you're kind of in reality enough to know that there are two, probably a good sign that it's more intrusive thoughts. Maia, anything else to add?
I just would probably say that like when I find myself in this kind of situation where there's a concern like this or a question like this, and I find myself in that kind of rumination state, I'm usually going to err on the side of this is OCD related. And therefore I'm going to proceed in the way that I would if I were doing ERP, which is oftentimes to interrupt the rumination and slap a big old maybe on it and move forward with something that I value instead.
Awesome. We're getting lots of thank yous. Andrea is saying, thanks to these videos in the OCD app, I'm slowly getting better day by day. All of the live stream videos have been very helpful. So she said thank you. So that's always really nice to see. You guys are so welcome. We have kind of like two very similar relationship OCD questions. I was diagnosed with OCD as a child and I'm now in my 30s. I feel like it sabotages all of my romantic relationships. How do you explain OCD to a non-OCD partner? And then there is a really similar one too. So maybe we can like two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
How do I have a healthy relationship when I have relationship OCD? My boyfriend is already saying that it weighs on him. And my first thought is, I do believe that your symptoms, especially if they're not being treated or if you're early on in treatment, probably do weigh heavily on your loved ones, right? You know, it's very, very rare that I work with a person and they like live with other people or they have a significant relationship or significant relationships and it doesn't affect that relationship in some way. So I would say, first of all, like make that even more motivator to get the treatment that you need. So hopefully these people are engaged in services or, you know, at least learning more about exposure and response prevention. As far as having a healthy relationship, I would just try to understand you're not necessarily in control of your obsessions. You're not necessarily in control of your feelings or your anxiety in that moment. You're not necessarily in control of your urges. You are in control of how you respond to those urges. You are in control of whether you give in to those ritualistic behaviors or whether you choose to resist those behaviors and allow yourself to be uncertain. So chances are your relationship OCD is going to weigh less on your relationship if you're not engaging in rituals, right? And so I would just bring it back to the ritualistic behavior, like resisting the reassurance seeking, resisting the avoidance, resisting the checking behaviors associated with relationships. You know, it's different for everybody, but chances are if what you want is to not have the compulsions or the OCD really weigh heavily on your person, the best way to do that is to reduce drastically with the ultimate goal of resisting those rituals that you usually find in that person. And I think that will help you have a healthy relationship with them too. So back to the previous question of how to have a healthy relationship. Again, you can't help the intrusive thoughts. You can't help the intrusive experiences. We're never going to be able to get rid of those completely. But what we would expect and what would help your relationships to be healthier is if you try to reduce or resist completely those rituals that you usually do with your loved one. Anything else, Maia?
Yeah, I think another part of this is while you are doing your best to resist those rituals, also I think there is a lot that our supporters can do to learn more about what you're going through and what you're struggling with, and also in turn, like what types of support are unhelpful actually, because a lot of supporters are prone to doing things like providing reassurance when you're seeking reassurance from them with questions or other sorts of behaviors. So having education around those sorts of things and providing accommodations, stuff like that, that the know-how of other things to do or how to approach the, like when someone is seeking reassurance, like what do you say as a supporter? Those sorts of things are definitely points that I think you can benefit from if your loved one can find out more about OCD through whether it's books or other organizations, OCD, the IOCDF, plenty of people on social media, as well as there are plenty of good books out there as well. But yeah, I think some aspect of your supporters engaging with OCD related material and learning more about the disorder, and specifically, I guess, also conversations with them about what you're struggling with and how they can be supportive, just keeping communication lines open as well.
Yeah.
I think those are two great ways.
Yeah, really good point. And that's actually a perfect segue to another question. We're on fire tonight, Maya. We're on fire. How can I not accommodate for my daughter's OCD but still be supportive? So this is for loved ones, right? So anything that we say right here, I have a little PDF here, what you can say in anxious moments as a supporter of someone who has OCD. And I know Quirk, you guys offer support groups for supporters.
Indeed.
And so do we. So does No CD. So two really great opportunities for loved ones to come and learn more about OCD. And I don't want to speak for you guys, but ours are free. I think yours are free.
Yes, ours are absolutely free. Yes.
Yep, absolutely. So again, way to go. Like two awesome resources for your loved ones. So just encouraging them to come and just be in a space to learn more. I will say that as loved ones, as far as, wanting to support the person who has OCD without accommodating the OCD, right? Like it is all just like it says here, just like Anonymous says, it's going to be about supporting the person, not accommodating the OCD. And so being able to find that really fine line of where one ends and the other begins. So there are a couple of things that you can do, and I'll expand on a couple, give some examples, but one is reflect. So you can potentially just be able to say things like, I know this is really hard for you, or I notice that you're really freaked out right now. So just some simple reflection, right? Like just being able to show them verbally, that you understand that like you can understand in this moment that they're really anxious. What we don't want to do is just swoop in and try to fix everything, which is hard to resist doing because as loved ones, we want to, it causes us distress to see our loved ones in distress. And so we're typically going right to like doing things for them or telling them that everything's going to be fine, or I love you no matter what. Nothing bad is going to happen. You have nothing to worry about. And those things might feel like they're helpful for us, might feel like they're temporarily helpful for your loved one, but they actually just make the anxiety grow and it makes them need more and more and more of it. So instead, that's why we say we don't want to give into those accommodating behaviors. We want to actually work with the person to help them find a way so that they can actually go through that anxiety-provoking situation. So you can reflect, like I said. I would also just try to be clear, right? Like if your person, in this case, your daughter, or in the previous examples with relationship OCD, if someone is asking a question, in response, you can just be very clear. Just say, I'm not going to answer those questions because I know that it only makes things worse. You can say things like, I know it's hard, but I can't let you do that. I don't want your anxiety to get worse. We both know that this is just going to make it worse next time, and I really care about you, so I'm not going to do that. I also just really like good old fashioned encouragement, right? Like I'm not going to do that for you. Like, I know that you can do this. I believe in you. You can do strong things, or you can do hard things. You're really strong. And I also think, especially in Anonymous here, I think the best thing that you can do, especially as a parent, is model. So show your child that you believe in them by not continuing to talk at length about these fears. Right? Like we're going to continue to be loving and spend time with them, but we can't just sit there and continue to talk about these fears over and over and over again. And then just basically helping them get going with the day, regardless of how they feel. So if they feel anxious, try to continue to bring those feelings with you. They're real. They can feel the feels, but we're going to continue on with our day. We're not going to let the anxiety or the OCD kind of dictate our life or our family. Do you have any other suggestions, Maya, from what you've learned or had your family do?
Yeah. So, I mean, something that we always say at Quirk is lead with empathy and lead with, as Jenna said, like a validation that what they're experiencing is very difficult. Like that sort of reflecting back to them, like, yeah, this sounds like you're having a really hard time right now. And this, you can even say like, it sounds like this is something that aligns with your OCD, and I can see that this is very distressing. So just validating for them that, what they're experiencing is real and you acknowledge that. And I think, let's see, definitely had another thought, but is flying by me right now. I will definitely.
It'll probably come to you as soon as we sign off.
Yeah, indeed, always.
It'll come to you as soon as we sign off. We're flying through. I'm trying to find ones that would be applicable to many, many people. Let's do this one. Any solid ideas on dealing with OCD spikes? For the most part, I can handle things, but during a spike or spiral, I lose ability to realize that it's OCD, and I do compulsions before it feels like a real threat, or because it feels like a real threat. Maia, I'll let you go first. I need to collect myself.
Absolutely. Well, it absolutely sucks when OCD spikes up again. And I think importantly is to have compassion for yourself, and that, OCD is a chronic illness, and, these ups and downs are going to happen. And it is also very disturbing when OCD does spike up. So having some compassion for yourself, and that what you're going through is very hard and takes a lot out of you. And in terms of like losing the ability to realize that it's OCD and then compulsing, I mean, sometimes I've found, at least in my personal experience, that when OCD spikes back up again, it kind of takes on a different flavor. Maybe that's not everyone's experience, but I find that when I have a spike, the obsession kind of shifts a little bit. And so it can take a bit of time to kind of look back and realize like, oh, this is in line with my OCD actually. And this is that I'm doing compulsions. What's important is that you're realizing it and are able to kind of monitor that and acknowledge what's going on. And that awareness is key to moving forward. Jenna, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple, but the one that comes to mind most vividly is, and something that helps me when I'm super anxious like this, is knowing that I can't necessarily help how I feel. I can't necessarily help the urges that I have and like my hypervigilance towards certain things. But I can help what I do about it, right? So no matter how high my anxiety is, it might be really hard to resist a certain ritual, but it's still, if I really truly wanted to, right? Like if $1 billion was on the line, I probably would find a way, right? And so, it's finding that small window of, okay, like what is within my control? Like I can't necessarily make myself feel better right now, but I am in control of what I do in this next 5-minute period, right? So just trying to break down time, I think, is something that really helps me. You're not going to necessarily be in control of how you feel 5 days from now, but maybe you can be in control of how you spend your time in the next 5 minutes. Like just small little changes like that, I think can be helpful. And the analogy, this last thing that I'll say about this, before we move on to the last question, is I think of these spikes and these spirals, like I think the image that comes to mind is like a forest fire. So I don't necessarily, a forest fire it doesn't go from like a spark to this big uncontrollable forest fire in just a couple of seconds, right? Like it all started with some type of spark, and had it been able to be managed in that small contained setting, it probably wouldn't have needed to be this big forest fire with like helicopters and going on for days and days and just really difficult to control. So I wonder, really, does it really go from 0 to 100 just like that? Or if we could really have broken it down, were there some signs that we were starting to increase in anxiety? Were there some signs that we were starting to ritualize more, where we could, in hindsight, and so we know for next time, resist our rituals sooner, right? Because we know that by giving into these rituals, we're contributing to that spike over time. And so I wonder, like with the whole forest fire analogy, are these little rituals that in hindsight that you might have been doing leading up to that spike, was that oxygen on the fire, right? So, and it's good to look back in hindsight. Okay, like where was I potentially ritualizing? Like where was my anxiety going up? And maybe I wasn't realizing it. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe work got in the way. Maybe other life things got in the way. But now I know for next time, when I start to ritualize like this is what I need to do. And then maybe it won't contribute to as big or as significant of a spike for the next time. So hopefully that helps. This is a really sweet question. I'm scared to tell my family I have intrusive thoughts because I live in a South Asian household and mental health is stigmatized, but I want a therapist to talk to. So this is tricky. Depending obviously on your background and culture, it can be difficult to just like go get therapy or to, go and do these things. The two things that I think of right off the top of my head are ERP School by Kimberly Quinlan and also Nathan Peterson's self-guided course on OCD and exposure and response prevention. You can find that, I believe it's just erpschool.com is Kimberly Quinlan's. And then the second one for Nathan Peterson would be ocdanxietyonline.com. So those are both self-guided courses that you could do. They're not necessarily with a therapist, but in these situations, it might be helpful to do like a more self-guided course. So these courses are specifically aimed at being able to help people where they can't access a therapist, where for whatever reason they're not able to access a therapist, whether it's finances or accessibility, whatever. So those are two suggestions that come to mind. That might be a good way to get the knowledge, to get the education, and to get the guidance of a therapist in the form of a self-guided course in a way that you don't necessarily need to, whenever you're ready, you could talk to your family about it, but that might be something you could do more on your own. Mm-hmm. Anything else on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to validate that, like, experiencing intrusive thoughts and also running into the issue of mental health being stigmatized, like, that's a really tricky place to be in, and I feel for you, definitely. Also, like, in addition to the resources that you gave, Jenna, also joining support groups.
Yes.
Quirk has support groups for those with firsthand lived experience of OCD, as well as supporters. And sounds like NoCD also has support groups as well. So those are also places to get some support and also be in the community of other people who kind of understand what's going on and can validate those experiences for you. Those are another free resource.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, sorry guys for the shortened broadcast tonight, but hopefully we were able to get a couple good questions answered in there. So Maia and Allie will be back on Monday. Unless something else happens, then maybe I'll make another surprise appearance.
Hopefully not.
If you need me, I'm here. I won't promise bedtime. I learned that I should not do that. So I'm going to go work on bedtime, but it was so nice to chat with you guys, even if it was just for 30 minutes. Maybe in the next 30 minutes, if you still need some additional resources or some additional help, I'd encourage you to check out some of our previous webinars. They're all recorded on our YouTube channel and also on our Facebook channel. So feel free to kind of review some of those old ones, some oldies but goodies on there. So in the meanwhile, we'll go ahead and sign off, and I'll let Maia say her goodbyes, but I wish you all the best of luck in your recovery, and I will maybe be back sometime soon.
All right. Yes, excited. We will definitely be back next Monday. Allie will hopefully be here with me to answer more questions. So
bye, everybody.
Bye.